Alright, Professor Haystacks here with a review of Applejack's Day Off, which, as I predicted, was Applejack not taking a day off because she was too busy doing things, although it went in an interesting direction with it. However, since there's plenty of reviews that cover the episode per se, I want to cover a few of the more esoteric scientific and engineering sorts of things. If you're new to this feed, that is sort of my thing. Now, to start off with, at the spa, when they're tracing the source of the steam room, I'm going to put a series of images up here. Not going to play the clip because the dialogue is not terribly relevant here. There will be one little bit playing, hopefully, at the appropriate part. But we see that the steam is transported by pipes, and there are hot water pipes. But in most newer houses, the inflow pipes like this are usually made of PVC. Only outflow pipes will be made of metal. Of course, pipes used to be sealed with lead till we found out that that is poisonous. There are issues in, say, Flint, Michigan, where the lead seals started to break down and leach into the water. So hopefully they're not doing that. The pipe fittings we see the fittings clearly on, it's not entirely clear what's joining them in the bulk of it because we don't see enough of it. But we do see on some of this down near the intake into the washers that there is a flange fitting, which is that broad flat piece, and inside it you'll have two pieces that sort of fit together, much like this. You'll have a hole and a post that it sticks into and then fastens with bolts. And you actually need some sort of flexible washer inside that can be compressed. If you've ever done any plumbing in your home, you may have had to do a joint where there's a gasket, it's called, that you put into the joint. The reason being that as the temperature changes, the pipe will expand and contract. So you have to have a gasket under compression so that the seal will stay regardless of how the pipes expand or contract. And also that means the pipes don't have to be perfectly fitted, which they would need to be otherwise. The other way of doing it is to make the pipes go on a screw. It requires pretty precise machining. The ponies may not have access to that. So one short clip here, should be very brief.
Whew. Now that leak's fixed, ponies won't get so cold they use up all those towels.
Alright, so what we see there is that one of the pipes is starting to leak steam. And what happens is that over time the gasket starts to wear out. Moisture, repeated temperature changes make it start to degrade, and it'll eventually start to leak, which is what we're seeing there. Sealant tape, like Applejack uses, is a short-term solution at best because the steam will deposit moisture on the adhesive, and the adhesive will wear off fairly quickly. What they need to do is open up the pipe and replace the gasket. May need to replace the whole pipe, probably just need to replace the gasket. That requires shutting the whole thing down, of course, so it's not a solution for right then, but it is a solution that will eventually need to be done. The next bit of equestrian plumbing we see, and I might note that this is more engineering than science, but still quite interesting. We see an irrigation system on the Apple family farm. Now, this somewhat resembles a gated pipe irrigation system, which with the advent of aluminum was introduced. You could in theory do it with other metals, but it's really works best with aluminum because it's so lightweight. You take a pipe that has holes in it, basically lay it out along a line, along a row of crops, and then the water flows out of it. Here we have it coming up like a sprinkler, which is not usually how farming irrigation is done, but I mean in theory you could do it that way. Note that the plot is fairly small. Now, this was mainly used in large fields, so what would it do? The farmer would then have to walk from the input to the very end of the pipe to make sure the water was flowing all the way along. This has some resonance in where Applejack walks back and forth, opening different valves and then shutting off the pump. However, she's got a small plot where the valves are all on one circuit. You couldn't put them all in one circuit because your water pressure wouldn't be great enough on these big fields that this was originally used on. But in this case, she can, as they figure out, open all the valves, then open up the pump, and just let all the water through at once. There are two possible reasons for her setup being like this. One is that there are supposed to be multiple types of crops in the plot that require different types of water or different amounts of water. This means that you can open some valves and not others to give the crops closer to the pump more water, and then you wait 20 minutes or whatever, then open the next valve along the line. But given the way she goes rapidly back and forth, and given the tone of the rest of the episode, the tone of the pig feeding bit, great bit of comedy, by the way, it's probably intended for diagnostics. Like there's a blockage at one part of the pipe. If you have these separately openable valves, it can help you narrow down where the blockage is. Or if there's a leak, I guess a blockage would be clear because everything past it would stop working. But it could help you diagnose a leak or drop in water pressure. There's things that could help you diagnose, is my point. And probably there was some problem with the system that was fixed, and she just kept doing the overly long process of turning on each individual section, when really she just needs to turn on and off the pump part. Maybe the second one, but beyond that, it's just more redundant than you need. Although if you really need them all closed for some reason, you would just open them all up at the beginning of your watering cycle and then close them all down at the end. You wouldn't go back and forth like that. Random note on that kind of system. The original kind that was used in the real world, where the farmer would have to walk down to make sure it was on all the way down. This is much faster with two people. You would have one person at the outflow and one person at the intake. The person at the intake would turn on each row in turn, while the person at the outside, which actually would be capped so water wouldn't actually be going out there, walks down in a sequence using flags or whatever. I mean, these days you could use phones, but they have better irrigation systems these days. But you'd use flags or something, some sort of signal to trigger them to go to the next one, and whether it was all right or not, or if the field was small enough, just yell across it. I'm sure some farmer or plumber can give a better explanation than that, but they can make their own video. Or write to me. I'll gladly post a correction if I'm wrong. Okay, now, more on the general tone of the episode. I'll put a still frame up there of the end of Applejack's utterly absurd I'll put up a still there of the end of Applejack's utterly absurd pig feeding process. There are signs in these unnecessary rituals, as they're sometimes called, of obsessive-compulsive disorder, specifically the form called Macbeth OCD, because it really should be called Lady Macbeth, because it's like compulsively washing her hands in the play Macbeth. OCD extends to a wide variety of thought patterns and behaviors, not just repetitive physical motions. Repetitive physical motions are a comparatively uncommon form of OCD, but they do occur, and they're the most obvious, so they're often what's most known. However, breaking an obsessive-compulsive ritual tends to cause great stress in the person, and Applejack doesn't really stress out once the thing is broken and it's pointed out that it's unnecessary. She had just gotten into a habit of it. Still, it is an interesting parallel. We also see, in a couple of amusing scenes, that Rainbow Dash has apparently warmed up to hooficures since the first season, or second season, whichever it was. As you may recall, she got one hoof sort of started and then ran out the first time. I don't really appreciate the implication this creates that all females must enjoy spa days. I mean, if nothing else, some women don't enjoy them, and if nothing else, there's people that would rather strangers not be putting their hands all over them. I'm kind of that mind myself. In this case, of course, they're not strangers because it's a tiny town or something. It has an odd number of amenities for a small town, but She knows all the masseuses pretty well. And we, of course, see bulk biceps in the back there. That is all my analysis for this time. Trying to keep this short. Again, I have panels at conventions coming up, so I got to leave time to make those. I got one done. So I will just say until next time, good night and drive safely. And lest you think it wasn't me doing the ending theme, I'll start it off here and transition over to something. My little pony, something, yeah. Do 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 do, my little pony. Da 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 da. Something, something. I'll be there right by your side. I'll be there right by your side. Do 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 do.